believe that their relationship, as they kept going on, was getting a little, problematic.
In July 2021, what began as a dream adventure turned into one of the most infamous cases of the decade. It was so infamous that Netflix picked up a documentary 4 years later to dive deeper into it with new details, never before seen footage, and insights that changed what we thought we knew about the case. Gabby Petito, 22 years old, was bright, artistic, and free-spirited. She and her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, had been together for years, publicly sharing their relationship online, initially appearing like a perfect couple. On July 2nd, 2020, they announced their engagement. A year later, they would set out on a cross-country road trip, planning to explore national parks. The couple hit the road on July 2nd, 2021, in a converted white Ford Transit van. They launched a YouTube channel named Nomadic Static. Gabby posted their first and only vlog on August 19. But beneath the curated Instagram posts, things were falling apart behind the scenes. On August 12, 2021, a 911 call in Moab, Utah reported a domestic incident. A bystander said he saw two people in an altercation where the man was striking the woman.
And I'd like to report a domestic dispute. Florida with a white van, Florida license plate, white land, gentleman, about 5'6" beard. They just drove off. They're going down Main Street.
What were they doing?
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
Okay, you said it's a white van?
White van. I can give you the license plate if you give me 1 sec. I took a picture of it.
The officers intercepted the couple on the road. The body cam footage was released and would later become a widely criticized part of the investigation. Gabby appeared anxious, visibly distressed, and would say that they were just in a couple's fight. She minimized the conflict, taking responsibility for what happened. Despite the 911 call, police somehow deemed Gabby the aggressor and separated them for the night. Brian would sleep in a hotel while Gabby slept in the van, and the officers would make the decision not to file a domestic violence or DV case. They let them go, and this might have been one of the most critical points that could have saved her life if it was handled better. From the view of everyone witnessing the footage, it's bizarre how this was the conclusion they came to, especially when you take into account the actual dispatch call and report before this. Other people who have witnessed or been on the receiving end of similar abuse and manipulation gave their opinions online. According to them, the footage revealed Gabby's pattern of minimizing situations, a red flag that would go unaddressed. A pattern many victims said they subconsciously fall into in order to cope with their situation. A few days later, on August 17, Brian abruptly flew to Salt Lake City, back to his parents' Florida home. He said it was to retrieve some extra supplies because he was thinking about extending the trip to August 19th. The final confirmed sighting of Gabby came on August 24 during a FaceTime call with her mother. She seemed tired, a bit detached, but still hopeful. Her last wide-smiled Instagram post appeared the next day on August 25th. By August 26, things had taken a much darker turn. This was the first time Brian was seen alone, drinking at a restaurant near Spread Creek dispersed camping area. Another witness saw him parking their white van in an undesignated spot at around 8 p.m. The next day, August 27, the couple was seen eating at a restaurant in Jackson Hole, Wyoming at around 1 p.m. According to the staff, Brian was visibly agitated, storming in and out of the restaurant, raising his voice at the waitstaff. Gabby appeared apologetic and deeply embarrassed. The meal would be her last known public appearance. It's important to note that their white van still hadn't moved by 6:30 p.m. that day. Autopsy reports point to August 27th being the day Gabby's life was taken from her. August 29th, two different people claimed to have picked up Brian while he was hitchhiking. But why? They have a van. Why would it have been abandoned? Then came August 30th, a chilling message: no service in Yosemite. This was the last text received from Gabby's phone. Her mother believes Gabby never wrote it. It directly contradicts what she had said a week earlier. She should have been heading to the Teton area, 800 miles away from Yosemite. Later, there would be more details that would point to someone else sending the message. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie returned to Northport, Florida, alone, driving the same van that they'd taken together to his parents' family home. Brian made no calls to her family. He didn't alert authorities. Evidence was now painting a grim picture. Surveillance footage from a local Whole Foods in Wyoming showed Gabby and Brian together, further narrowing the timeline. Gabby was seen looking withdrawn, her arms were folded, and she walked with a stiffness that showed discomfort. Brian appeared agitated as he slammed the car door in what seemed like a heated argument. Theories for what the argument could have been appeared later. After Gabby was reported missing, neighbors noted strange behavior at the Laundrie residence. On September 6 to 8, Brian and his parents went on a family trip to Fort DeSoto Park. They packed up and left in the middle of a missing person investigation, raising serious questions about the family's awareness or involvement. They also told their attorney they were there until September 7th before leaving the campsite together. The neighbors wouldn't report seeing them back until September 10th. Between September 10th and 11th, police were called 5 times to the home. One of the calls was by Gabby's father, but the police report marked the situation as handled. September 11th would be the day Gabby's family officially made a missing persons report. Then the search officially began. On September 13, Brian reportedly left home in a silver Mustang to go hiking in the Carlton Reserve. That same car was found abandoned near the park, but Brian, gone. 2 days later, on September 15, his parents reported him missing, though they would later revise the date, admitting that it was actually the 13th, not the 14th, being the last time that they saw him. Another timeline shift further cast doubt on their credibility. During this time, the police began organizing, retracing Gabby's last known steps. Then, a breakthrough.
Gabby's body was found in Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest on Sunday, and Laundrie has been named a person of interest.
September 19, human remains were found near Spread Creek Dispersed Camping Area, the same area where Gabby's van had been spotted weeks prior. The body matched Gabby's description. A few days later, the FBI confirmed what the world feared. Gabby Petito was dead. Her cause of death? Manual strangulation. She had likely been dead for 3 to 4 weeks before discovery, putting her time of death around August 27, the same day of the restaurant incident. Back in Florida, Brian's parents remained silent. Their son was now the prime suspect in a nationwide manhunt. His phone and personal items were seized. A new AT&T account had been opened September 4th, just days after his return from the West. It was later revealed Brian had used a debit card and PIN between August 31st and September 1st that did not belong to him. After Gabby's body was recovered on September 19, 2021, attention turned fully towards Brian Laundrie, who was no longer just a suspect of interest. He was the main suspect. The Carlton Reserve in Florida, a 25,000-acre swamp and wildlife area, became the focus of the search. Brian's parents claimed he had gone hiking there September 13th. They reported him missing days later. The Mustang he took was at the reserve, but Brian himself had seemingly disappeared into thin air. At first, they decided to leave the car, which makes sense, since it would be his only mode of transportation if he was still alive. But Roberta would return to the scene and drive the Mustang out. There was an alleged warning notice on the car, and that was the reasoning for taking the car afterwards. For weeks, search teams combed through the reserve.
Investigators are back out to the Carlton Reserve in Venice to search for her fiance, Brian Laundrie.
It's very difficult. Essentially, 75% of it's underwater. And other areas that are dry, we're trying to clear.
Using drones, swamp buggies, dogs and divers, the terrain was difficult, waterlogged, snake-infested and full of dense vegetation. Despite the exhaustive effort, nothing was found. Then, after a month of silence, an unexpected development. On October 20, Brian's backpack, notebook, and partial skeletal remains were discovered by his own parents, who joined the search for the first time that day. After a month of searching, this evidence was found within an hour. The location was not far from the entrance to the park and had previously been underwater due to flooding. It sparked immediate suspicion. The remains were confirmed to be Brian's. Before and after Brian's death, the internet pointed out red flags in his behavior towards a partner he supposedly loved.
We joked around and said she was my emotional service human. because everywhere she went, just always cheering me up.
Her friend Rose Davis recounts a time when Gabby was running late to an event because Brian stole and hid her ID.
Well, we were supposed to go line dancing. It was ladies' night, and her drive is about 30 minutes to me, and halfway there she realized her ID was missing, and so it caused a really big argument because Brian just didn't want her to go out. She came over and cried and just talked to me about what happened and told me all that she was comfortable telling me.
I'm so sorry I'm late. Brian stole my ID. I'm sobbing right now. This was a text from Gabby Petito. Brian admitted point blank that he did it because he didn't want her to go out. Even Gabby recognized his manipulative behavior, but leaving was not so easy. She would confront him over text. Don't try to control me because it only makes me mad. I love you so much, but it's the way that you speak to me that hurts the most. Even the cross-country road trip was speculated by Davis to be another way to isolate Gabby from her friends and family. Brian's body was completely decomposed by the time police found him. Among the items found near Brian's remains was a backpack, a revolver, a tent that was never pitched for some reason, and a notebook, partially water damaged but still legible. In it, Brian had written a confession. He claimed Gabby had been injured after falling into a creek in Wyoming. Brian claims that she had begged him to end her suffering. He described it as an alleged mercy killing. The note read more like a justification than an apology. He wrote, "I ended her life because it was what she wanted." To the public and Gabby's family, the confession didn't bring any closure, just more questions. Other van lifers who were in the area counteracted Brian's claim of having no cell service since they never had their service dropped there. Notably, the autopsy also showed no signs of injury consistent with Brian's version of events. Gabby had been manually strangled when a revolver was there. There was no mercy, only violence. Strangulation is one of the most intense, drawn-out ways to kill someone, usually seen in crimes of passion and rage, where emotion is allowed to override logic. This isn't done on a whim. You want the person to suffer. It's slow, it's painful. Oftentimes, you're face to face with the person. Another haunting detail emerged. In the days leading up to her murder, Gabby had contacted her ex-boyfriend, hinting at wanting to end her relationship with Brian.
And she said that she was scared of how Brian Laundrie might react, but she wanted to leave Brian Laundrie, and we all know what happened just a few days later with the awful murder.
Those texts were among the last she would ever send. People on the internet theorize this may have been the reason why Brian was so angry at the Whole Foods. They think Brian found out that she was texting her ex somehow. Sadly, her ex might have also been the last person that Gabby attempted to contact.
Gotten a phone call from her. I was at work and was unable to answer it.
If Brian did, there would be no trial, no cross-examination, no full account of what happened. The notebook became his final word, and many believed it was filled with lies. The manhunt ended, but the questions, they didn't. Another very disturbing detail surrounded his mother. His mother was someone who was noted as having incredibly strange behavior. Titled in bold letters, "Burn After Reading." A letter was written by Roberta Laundrie to her son Brian. For months, it had remained unseen by the public, but its contents were very creepy with or without the context of Gabby's murder. In it, Roberta wrote, "If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. And if you're in jail, I'll bake a cake with a file in it." Written by a mother to her son, who ended up as the main focus of a missing persons case. A case that ended in a confirmed homicide.
Roberta Laundrie not only swears that the letter was written well before Gabby's death, but that she says the Petito's attorneys have taken her words out of context here. Now, Roberta claims that she wrote it and gave it to her son before he and Gabby left for their road trip.
Roberta insisted that it had been written before Brian and Gabby left for their cross-country road trip. She claimed it was a private joke filled with metaphors and hyperboles, something meant to symbolize unconditional love, not actual intent. Something that was intentional, however, was Brian calling his mother around 30 times, and when they finally spoke around 11 p.m. that night, Brian was quoted as saying, "Gabby is missing, I need a lawyer." When asked about it, his mother claimed she never thought anything of it because she was tired at the moment. By the time the note surfaced, Gabby was dead and Brian had taken his own life. leaving behind a confession that many considered manipulative and evasive. The timing of the letter's discovery couldn't have been worse or more suspicious. It added fuel to growing public speculation that the Laundrie family knew more than they let on. The letter could be interpreted as evidence of obstruction or foreknowledge. Gabby's family expressed horror at its contents. The Petito family's attorney described the letter as outrageous and damning, questioning what kind of parent would write such things. Roberta stood by her claim that the letter had no connection to Gabby's disappearance. When asked why she titled it "Burn After Reading," she had no answer that satisfied public concern. Whether the letter was literal or not, it painted a chilling picture of the Laundrie family dynamic. Even when police showed up at their family home, they refused to comply or speak to the police without their attorney. Maybe they were just being cautious, because they don't want something they said to incriminate them wrongfully. Maybe.
When was the last time that you saw Brian and Gabriel?
Well, Brian is here.
Brian is here?
Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say.
Am I able to talk to your son? The other officer said...
He's not going to talk to you.
Okay.
We're not going to talk to anybody.
I mean, as a parent, you wouldn't want to know where it happened with
I understand what you're saying, but thank you. I'm not speaking to anybody.
Yeah, we're not comfortable
without
talking
an
to
attorney,
anybody.
so that's that.
But then the strange behavior in the family extends to Brian's sister as well. At first, she seemed to be the only family member willing to speak. As public outrage mounted and the search for Gabby turned desperate.
I did not say that I saw my brother. I said I haven't been able to speak to him in reference to the time when I was called by the police. I found out the next day with everybody else. We are just as upset, frustrated, and heartbroken as everybody else. And I am losing my parents and my brother and my children's aunt and my future sister-in-law on top of this, and you're not helping.
Why your parents? Why your parents? You're talking about
Because
Christmas.
they're not talking to us either.
Why aren't they talking to you guys?
If I knew...
So where else have you seen Brian since September 1st?
I have not seen anybody after 8 o'clock on September 6th. I have not spoken to my parents.
Cassie stepped forward and gave interviews. She claimed she had no idea Gabby was even missing until the news broke. She said she hadn't seen Brian since he returned from his trip, and she insisted that she wanted Gabby to be found just as much as anyone. But like so many things in this case, her story didn't stay consistent. Text message conversations were made public, where Cassie was in contact with her mother all along despite her claims. They even made jokes about a time when police lost track of Brian because they mistook Roberta for him while she was wearing a hat.
Officers thought they observed Brian Laundrie return home Wednesday the 15th in the Mustang, but it was actually his mother, Roberta Laundrie, wearing a baseball cap, with Taylor adding, they're kind of built similarly.
When the Netflix docuseries that focused on the case was released, the Laundries stood firmly against it, claiming that the creators of the series skewed information to portray the narrative that they want. They claim false, biased, and twisted information that disregards or omitted important facts. But how? The deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie marked the end of one of the most highly publicized missing persons cases in recent memory. But when the headlines faded, what remained was grief, anger, and deep suspicion. Not just over what happened between the couple, but how it was handled, and who may have helped Brian along the way. Gabby's family was left devastated, not only by the loss of their daughter, but by the cold silence of the Laundries. When Gabby was first reported missing, Brian and his parents refused to answer calls or messages from her family. They gave no assistance to law enforcement, no acknowledgement of her disappearance. Instead, just days after Brian returned home alone, the Laundries went on a family camping trip to Fort DeSoto Park from September 6th to 8th. Even then, their timeline was very murky. They initially claimed Brian left on the 14th, only to later change it to the 13th. They said he went hiking in the Carlton Reserve, a treacherous swamp with no phone and no supplies. Yet on October 20th, after more than a month of searching, Brian's parents found his remains themselves. Within an hour of joining the official search, law enforcement quickly accepted this explanation. The public didn't. The Netflix docuseries released in February 2025 brought renewed attention to the case, yet despite all of the coverage, the haunting questions persist. Could Gabby have been saved if the Moa police had taken the 911 call more seriously? If Brian had been held accountable for using her debit card? If the Laundries had cooperated sooner? If anyone had intervened with more urgency? maybe she would still be here. The Petito family has since created the Gabby Petito Foundation, advocating for domestic violence victims, pushing for better systems of intervention and response. They continue to fight, not just for justice, but for change. Gabby Petito should have finished that road trip. She should have come home. She should be alive today, but her life was stolen from her.